today we are going to make this, which is a stove. This is great for hiking, backpacking, and of course being on the run from zombies. And what this is going to run off of is denatured alcohol. Now there are tons and tons of instructions on how to build these. So how's mine different? Well, it's not all that different than some of the ones that you're going to find online. The difference about this one is I am using a Venom energy drink. I've got quite a few different energy drink cans. The reason, the aluminum on these are much thicker, so it is much more backpack worthy because it doesn't get banged around as easily as some of the other cans. The second reason is the way that the top fits into the base. This is a priming system, and it will light itself after it gets set up. So let's start with the build, and you'll be able to see how we get this from a full, just an empty bottle really, to a fully functional camping stove that you can't smell, and there's no smoke, and you can boil water and cook food pretty quickly. Alright, here we go. Alright, so the plan, put the top inside the bottom, but there's a problem. You can't just measure what part of the top that you need and the part of the bottom, because they're not going to be the same measurements. And here's why, okay? Because you want to cut the top right here below where the indentation is here, where it actually folds out to the full size of the cylinder. You need a little bit of this top part to match the bottom part in terms of the diameter of it, okay? So what you're going to need to do is where this tapering stops, you want to give it just right about here is really where you want to cut this, okay? However, you don't want to cut this part first, okay? The reason is that because this part has to fit in the bottom, you're going to get differences in those heights because the bottom is concave here. It's got this indentation. So that's going to throw your numbers off. It's hard to estimate unless you've used the can before what that size difference is. And every can's different, so I've got a little trick that you can do that's kind of hassle-free that you can you'll mark it later and then you'll kind of fix it as you go along, okay? So what we're going to do is turn your can upside down and get an idea of about where you want it marked, okay? So what I've done is I simply just use my blocks, which I've seen many people do this before, as just my measure. So where I look at it, I say, okay, my marker's going to mark it about there, which is fine. It's above my taper. That gives me a little room to play if I need to sand it down some more or cut it, or if there's any edgings that need to be trimmed out, I've got a little room to play. So what that means is, because this part has to fit in the concavity, I can't just use this measure to mark my top. I actually need it a little bit higher because of that indentation that's in the bottom of this. So what I need to do is cut the bottom part more. It needs to be taller than the top part. Okay, so the way I accomplish this is I simply just get a little spacer. Okay, now it seems like it's a lot. It's going to be tall maybe, so that's okay. The taller, that's fine. You're just holding more. You get to choose what you want to do. I mean, I'm only going to be cooking really small things, so if it's tall, not a big deal. But you don't want to get it too tall because then, of course, your center of gravity changes and it gets really crazy. But for me, this is going to be just fine, especially just for explanation purposes. Okay, so here's my marker. Now I'm having to use a silver one because it's not going to show up very well on anything else. So now I simply spin the can just to get a little bit of a line. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just something for you to cut, okay? So there's my line there. Okay, perfect. So that's going to be the bottom. All right, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to take my Dremel, and what I have is just a nice little Dremel head to cut. If you have a nice little saw, you can use that too. I probably wouldn't use scissors. You're going to dent it all up and it's going to get kind of messy. You want the can as smooth as possible because we're going to be hammering this thing in just a little bit, okay? I'm not going to show you the boring stuff for cutting it. I'll show you when we get back. Alright, here we have it, the bottom half and the top half. So as you can see, not the right size, but we need to fit this inside of this one. Okay, now we could try to bang this down in there, but would never get it back out to get that measurement. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I take something that, piece of cardboard or something that I can use to mark how far this one can go down in there. So this is just a piece of cardboard. So then I set that up. I said, okay, so now I know that my depth of this one, where I need to cut it, is going to be right around that right there. So that's my distance, okay, that I marked right there. So whenever I need to cut this, I can hammer it down, and I know it will stop right at the edge of this lip, and we can sand this off and make it nice and pretty. Okay, so here we go. Get rid of that. Turn this upside down and kind of see where that is. Okay, so that's good. It's above my lip, so we're good here. It's above that taper. So now I need to just kind of get my measurements, and it looks like pretty close to right here. 3 blocks will about do it. Okay, so it may cut it a little bit short. That's okay. It'll still fit down in there and just barely kiss the top of that concave. Okay, or if I want to, I can actually just make my line and cut just a little bit above it, since this is a fat marker. Okay, so measurements, all's good. So now we just mark this one the same way we mark the first one. Just simply move it, spin it around, and we get a nice little a nice little line, okay, that we can follow, and voila, we're off to the races again. All right, so we'll cut this, and I'll show you how to meld these two together, okay? All right, so we've got the top and the bottom now cut so that one will fit inside the other. Okay, the trick with this one is hammering it down evenly inside there. Otherwise, you might get a split on the side. So this is going to be a little bit tricky. One thing you want to look for is make sure that there aren't any tears along the edge. So when you're cutting this, whether you're cutting with shears or anything, you want to try to eliminate any of those little cuts down, because if you do that, whenever you hammer this in, this might split. Hopefully we won't have that today. If we do, we'll just carry on as if there weren't a split there. And really and truly, a split isn't going to kill you in terms of it being useful, unless it just goes all the way down to the bottom, okay? So what I usually do is I stick this on top of this and kind of get it going. What I might actually do here is this little edge here is a little bit catching. So what you may want to do is get a block of wood or sandpaper and just kind of knock out that edge, just so it's a little bit smoother. And if you really want to get fancy with this, and I advise you do this, I'm going to grab it here, and put a little bit of WD-40 or other lubricant on the sides of this to help that slide in just a little bit better. So, just a little bit here. Of course, you want to make sure this is cleaned out before you start burning stuff in it. You don't want to be burning lubricant in here. Just a nice dip in soap and water ought to do a pretty good job for that. Okay, so makes it nice and easy. All right, so here we go. Now you want to hammer this in all at the same time. So what you want to do is kind of get this thing started just where it's there, where it wants to kind of pop out, and get this even. Alright, so I've got that. I've got my rubber mallet. And as you can see, all I'm simply doing is just kind of tapping it down in there. No need to go fast. Okay, see? Tap, tap, tap. And don't do that. Professional video here, right? Okay, so here we are tapping it away. Alright, it's there. Alright, easy. No tears, everything's good. You can see that the bottom, there's a little bit of space down at the bottom, that's fine. All that does is it allows, when you pour the alcohol in here, to reach down and kind of fill up this cavity that we just created. So remember, there's a taper down there now, so there's a lot of volume that's going to channel up our little vents here where we're going to be putting holes for our alcohol burner. So if you happen to make this too short, one thing you might want to do as a just in case, like I said, I tend to cut mine a little short anyway, is on these lids, cut a little V in there so that if this lid touches all the way to the bottom, you have a way for that alcohol to move into this cavity at the bottom, okay? But I just leave mine like this. I cut it a little bit short, that way it's down in there. If you need to, you could pull it back out just by squeezing the sides and kind of fix it if you need to, but you should be fine, okay? Check it as you go down. All right, so now we've got this, we're ready to go. All we need to do now, sand off the top, make it nice and smooth, and we need to look where that taper is, okay? Because what we need to do is we need to put holes on the outer part of this can, but not the inner part now. So you can't see it on the video, but on the side here, you can feel where that taper is on the inside. So all you have to do is come down just a little bit, and we're going to put a hole here, here, and here, all the way down. Now, if you wanted to trim this top part to make it a little bit smaller, you can do that. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Now that it's in here, it's not going anywhere. Take your Dremel tool or cutters and just cut yourself right here. As long as you don't cut below that taper, you're fine. I'm going to leave this as is. I'm not had any troubles with that. But if yours is too big, yeah, go ahead and trim that down so it's a little bit closer. So what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to go through and mark where I'm going to put my drill holes and sand the top, and then we're done. Okay, we'll light it and see how it goes. Okay, so I've got all my holes drilled in. Now, my holes are probably a little bit too big, honestly. You probably want to go somewhere around 1/16, maybe even 1/32. Mine are going to be probably too large to really kind of cook on, but for demonstration purposes, I mean, we'll see how they work. So what you want to pour in here, which I've already done, is you want to use denatured alcohol. It's a little bit high, it's a high concentration of alcohol. You don't want to use rubbing alcohol. Those don't really work well in these. The rubbing alcohol will work in other types of burners, but because of the way that this one's designed, it won't burn nearly as well. One of the problems that we have with some of this large one here with the large openings is you're going to burn a lot of fuel fairly quickly. So to get these to work, you have to prime these, which means you got to get all of this hot so that the fumes will come out of the sides. So what we'll do is we're just going to let that burn. Now I know you can't really see much, but there is heat coming off of that, so we're going to let that warm up, and as it does, these will sometimes light themselves. Other times you'll just have to light it and you'll get it going there. Alright, and now we have our burner. You can see all of these are lit. They lit themselves. So now the trick is you can just put your pan right on top and boil your water or whatever it is you want to do. But do be careful. If you notice, if you put a pan on there, it's not balanced. That's the worst thing you can do, is turn one of these things over. So set your pan on it and you're off to the races. Alright guys, this is your can. Hope you enjoyed it.